Hey guys, welcome to our latest episode of the Kansas City Cast. Today we are honored to have my good friend Joel Gordon on the podcast. Joel, I know because he used to play music with my brother-in-law, but since he's been in Kansas City, has done a lot of things, a lot of stuff in the jazz world, which is pretty cool. But I know Joel as a music educator, a musician, and just an overall great guy. Welcome to the podcast, Joel. We're glad to have you. Why don't you give us an introduction?
Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, first time caller, long time listener. But I grew up here in Kansas City. I've tried to leave a couple of times, but always been pulled back. Kind of long term hope for my family, and of course, kind of the intersection of music and culture is a great place to be. And so, love being in Kansas City and just the music scene and kind of culturally where we are as a global or national city, but in our humble Midwest abode. So, love being in Kansas City.
For sure. And so tell us a little bit. So, I mean, you do a lot of things, which is really fun. I don't know if I'll have time to cover all of them today.
Sure.
But let's talk first about, I'm in my head trying to choose what we're going to start with. Yeah. Let's start with the big band. So you started a big band, which is not something that I think many people can probably say anymore.
Yeah, no. Kansas City has a long history of jazz music, and really over the past 100 years, jazz music has kind of from inception developed. And they say that jazz music, at one time was kind of folk music and then evolved into popular music and is now maybe like art music that you'd pay $100 to go to the Kaufman Center to see. So it's kind of hit all the stops as far as different musical templates, if you will. So part of that preservation and kind of art music is the big band form, which is kind of like seeing an elephant walk down the highway, like not something you see every day, but kind of causes your eye to draw near to that. So we started the Northland Big Band a year ago, and really is kind of the big band north of the river. So Platte and Clay County, that populace of, a third of a million people, what have you. We meet every second Wednesday down in North Kansas City. We play at Cinder Block Brewery, which shout out to another great Northland venue.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. And then we play various events throughout the year, kind of summer music series and Christmas concerts and for school kids and things like that. So most of the folks in the band are either living in the Northland or work in the Northland or from the Northland. And then we have kind of a few, what I call role players that we kind of farm out to from other communities and borrow. But for the most part, it's people who love the Northland and a great opportunity for their friends and family to come see them play and kind of a friendly environment. So, yeah.
Was that something that you had always kind of wanted to start, or talk us through that process of how it kind of was an idea and then maybe kind of was born into reality?
Yeah. So, Kansas City, kind of pre-COVID, there were quite a few what we call reading bands. So we don't really rehearse. We just kind of hand out the folders of music and we play. You can call tunes from the bandstand. Pre-COVID and during COVID, quite a few of those went away. And so, what better time to start something than after a pandemic,
Sure.
Think about things that you've never done, right? And so that was kind of like, hey, this isn't really happening in the Northland anymore. Maybe at one time was. And so kind of post-pandemic, moving back to Kansas City, I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity. People want to get back together and connect and be in an environment where we can have kind of big music things again that we couldn't for a few years. So.
Yeah. And then do you play in the band? Are you conducting? What's your role look like?
Yeah. So I play saxophone in the band. So the band's 18 members. So I kind of count off the tune and then we go.
Everybody takes off.
Cut it off and then hopefully end together. And
Sure.
Most of the time we do. Yeah.
It sounds like you guys have been playing together for a little while now. So that there's, I'm sure, a sense of familiarity that comes with that and makes those transitions a little easier.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I kind of charted like a Spotify Wrapped of everything we played, and we've got about 60 charts in the folder. And there are definitely ones that people want to call every week if they really like to play. And there were ones that I picked out that they didn't want to play so much after we read for the first time. So kind of gives me some feedback. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so obviously you're a Northlander. You started the Northland Big Bands. You're a Northlander. What do you think keeps you kind of rooted here in the Northland?
Yeah. So what I really love about the Northland, and if you talk to people that aren't from the Northland, it's like the dark side of the moon, right?
The only reason to go there is the airport.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Or worlds of fun, but, Jackson County, really the main kind of downtown area, and then, suburban, there's tons of people that live in Johnson County, and then the history of KCK, and then kind of the surrounding areas. And so the Northland seems kind of left out sometimes, but I really love the combination of kind of the urban feel, so you can see the city, from the Northland from various spots, but also the suburban feel of, there's a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of parks, kind of open areas, and then also kind of the rural feel too. You get up to Highway 92 and kind of beyond as you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. You
Yep.
might as well be in the middle of Kansas or something like that. And so you kind of get, all three of those mediums as you move around the Northland. So.
And then you mentioned at the very beginning, you tried to move away a couple of times, but always kind of ended up back here. What is it you think about Kansas City that's been that real draw for you that says, hey, this is where I want to plant and raise my family kind of long term?
Yeah, so we lived in a small town for a while. My wife and I ran a youth nonprofit for a couple years and kind of missed being away from family. So I had some family at the time in Chicago. And so we actually spent a summer. I worked for a music festival up there to kind of try out what would it be like to live in a little bit bigger a city.
Sure.
And I was commuting over an hour every day in my car, just crying, for all this like construction traffic. And I was like, I don't think we're meant to be in that big of a city. So my wife's kind of a small town person and I'm from Kansas City. And we've kind of settled on like, hey, this is a great feel, especially the Northland where you get sometimes that a little bit more Midwestern vibe, that it's a great spot for us to raise our family and be close to family too. And her parents have actually moved here as well. They moved
awesome.
over from Chicago to kind of simplify. So we got it all right here.
That's great.
So as you think about music, Northland, I mean, like I said, you're doing some other things too. Like what has you excited about what's happening up here right now?
Yeah. So in terms of kind of representation of music, I think we're at our best when we're thinking about kind of the whole spectrum of professionals and community members and students and kind of future listeners. And so, such as the Northland Big Band, I'm also involved in the Northland Symphony, and they have a really robust youth program that we have youth orchestra and saxophone ensemble and things like that. That we're always thinking about not just the professional musician, but what's kind of the next generation of listeners, and how do you bring in people that maybe have never seen an orchestra before, or didn't know there were different sizes of saxophones, or things like that, to really educate and inspire kind of somebody that maybe music wasn't part of their upbringing or is a part of their day-to-day language in their household. And so I think we do a really good job of that in Kansas City, that we have some of the world's best musicians right in our backyard, but also make a point to get that into the community and into the schools and kind of in people's hands where it's tangible and something that they can access. And so I think that that's something that I really appreciate about Kansas City versus maybe New York or LA. You don't get that as much. You're kind of in your pocket doing your thing, and you maybe don't think about what would this be like for students to experience, or what would this be like for different folks kind of from different walks of life to experience. And so that's a great thing about Kansas City.
Talk a little bit more about the saxophone choir.
Yes. Historically, orchestra music started 400 or 500 years ago. You get Bach and Beethoven, those guys in the 1600s, 1700s, and the saxophone wasn't around yet. And so most orchestras don't have a saxophone player, or if they do, maybe it's for one George Gershwin piece or something like that they farm in the saxophone player, and then they have to walk out backstage for them to play everything else, Bach and Beethoven. So we started a group as a part of the Northland Youth Symphony. It's only saxophones. So in saxophones, you have small ones and medium ones and large ones that you can really build a full ensemble. So we found about 20 high school kids to start this thing a few years ago. And we meet on Sunday evenings over at William Jewell College, another Northland staple. So in terms of kind of access to that classical music and other styles of music too, give saxophone players the full symphony experience. And so that's been a lot of fun. That's something we started a couple years ago, again, kind of right out of COVID, another idea that my wife has been supportive of and say, hey, this would be fun, and make it happen. So
yeah. And that's in addition to the big band, is that right?
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got your hand in quite a few different things then.
Right. Yeah. We're all over.
And have to keep you busy.
And that's doesn't include all the weddings and other random events that you play all the time.
Yep. Yeah. Kansas City is kind of a hub for wedding and event bands. And so a lot of the different bands that I play in kind of farm out to go to other communities, Springfield or Wichita or Topeka or things like that, Des Moines, Nebraska, all over. Kansas City is where a lot of musicians kind of lay their head, but, are willing to kind of travel and work elsewhere. So,
yeah. Have you done any travel with the big band itself yet? Is that coming on the horizon at all? Or are you guys primarily going to stay here?
Yeah. So we're originally I called it the Battle of the Bands, but I think that was a little bit too forward. So we're calling it Big Band Bonanza. We're going going toe to toe with the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra this summer. We're doing a shared event. No, it'll be among friends. So we're going to meet them midway in Westport, and we're going to do a concert together. But yeah, as far as kind of getting out and about, there's a big band festival in Clarinda, Iowa, where the great Glenn Miller is from. So maybe we'll make our way up there. I played with other big bands at that one, so eventually maybe even cross state lines. I don't know.
Yeah.
And get out and about a little bit. Yeah.
Kind of on that note, is there anything that you're really looking forward to as we kind of get into 2026 for the big band? Any kind of maybe future goals or things that you'd love to see the group do? moving
Yeah,
forward?
absolutely. So we kind of successfully went through our first year, solved for people will come to concerts, we can fill out the band. So we're actually working on kind of nonprofit status. So we've just kind of entered into that pipeline. We'll start working on that so we can do a little bit of fundraising, a little bit more promotion, and kind of make it something long term and really embedded into the community as far as kind of the band goes forward and hopefully outlives, the people who were there at the inception of it. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So I think we'd probably be remiss if we did have the opportunity, we didn't ask you. So obviously jazz has been a huge part of Kansas City,
Mhm.
right? Our history, we have a 18th and Vine district that is a jazz district
Mhm.
for all intents and purposes. So talk to me what it's like about being a jazz musician in the place where jazz, and this wasn't necessarily born, but like really grew up in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Kansas City is interesting in that during the Prohibition era, Kansas City somehow took like a left turn around that, through kind of some of the political bosses and things like that. So in the speakeasy days, Kansas City never was closed for business, and so jazz really paired and kind of coupled with that people wanted to hang out late into the night. Jazz music was a great social forum and kind of artistic forum to accompany that. And so Kansas City's really never stopped that. And so the 18th and Vine district and kind of various pockets of downtown, you'll see places like the Majestic or the Phoenix that have been around for decades, and have continued that tradition. Kind of in terms of moving forward, though, and being, in the contemporary era of that, there's a great lineage of saxophone players, including Charlie Parker, who's maybe the greatest jazz saxophone player to ever live, up into current day Bobby Watson and some of the others who have kind of returned to Kansas City. That from day one, you get kind of an appreciation, just side by side, right in front of your face of what these great musicians were doing and shaping the music, but also in preserving the music. So I think in Kansas City, growing up as a saxophone player, your goal is never to be the best saxophone player, but to really preserve and take that music, kind of to the next generation, as opposed to change the world, maybe necessarily again, as far as the art and the craft of it. So
Yeah. And then, so how does, I mean, you grew up in Kansas City, so you probably grew up in some sense of that community, but like, how does a kid from the suburbs of Kansas City wind up getting into jazz? I just don't see that happening very much anymore. So I'm curious how did jazz even, how did you find a way there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of exciting programs starting today, and I think I've been able to kind of reflect of maybe I was more of a one-off case that my parents were really supportive of the music, and they found opportunities for us to go and see live music and go downtown or go into the city or whatever it was. There's a program actually starting next month in the Northland called Future Jazz that my friend Marcus Lewis, that's one of the jazz directors at UMKC, which is a really strong conservatory music program, is going to have a site here in the Northland, so kind of connecting students in the suburbs to kind of that jazz access. And there's also something starting down at Westport Coffee House this month as well called the New Jazz Order, that's run by the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra. Is more of a public forum. So they do most of their concerts at the Folly Theater or the Kaufman Center and things like that. But this is in the basement of Westport Coffee House, and anybody, all ages, can come, and they'll do it every other week. And their hope is to get people to come watch, but also sit in and kind of experience the bandstand as well. And so I think we maybe not necessarily lessons learned, but kind of have evolved of, there's some separation between living in the suburbs and maybe the access of where the music is downtown, mostly of kind of bringing that as the city continues to expand further and further apart in the different pockets and neighborhoods. So
Very cool.
Where's your favorite place now to go and listen? If you were just going to go hear some jazz, do you have a favorite place to go?
that's like being asked to pick your favorite.
That's
That's a hard one. Yeah, there's kind of a different categories maybe that there are things that are a little bit more dressed up, and so there are great places like the Majestic that it's a little bit more of a steak dinner, kind of a high dollar plate that the music is always quality and always good. There are places like Westport Coffee House, that things are a little bit more experimental, and so there's kind of different flavors that you kind of know what you're getting into as far as, I'd really like some straight ahead stuff, or I'd like some stuff that this is the first time they've tried it and might be the last time they've tried it,
Sure.
So yeah, there's kind of the full spectrum in Kansas City.
What about maybe a good like entry level? Somebody's like, I'm new to jazz. It kind of sounds cool. I want to go somewhere for an evening and hear some. Where's a good place to plug in? Maybe for somebody that's brand new.
Yeah,
Yes.
kind of right past the Kaufman Center is the Green Lady Lounge, and they do music every day of the year, and just kind of an easy cover charge. Have your cocktail, and you can sit there for a couple hours and not be asked to interact or anything like that. You can just kind of observe, and so that's always the place that I kind of usher people. They have great musicians every night of the week playing there at the Green Lady, and then next door is the Black Dolphin, which there opens on the weekends and do a lot of original music and things like that, which always great bands there. So yeah, pretty centralized in terms of the city, and a great place to go and hang out for a couple hours if you haven't really experienced that before. So yeah,
It's very cool. Well, maybe turning just more to more Kansas City in general, and maybe it's music related, but what do you think is one of the biggest misconceptions people have about Kansas City?
Yeah, so I heard somebody say once that Kansas City is just kind of a big cow town, that Kansas City kind of grew up on industry as far as farming and rail yards and things like that. We still have a lot of that history, but I think Kansas City, especially in the 21st century, really made a push to be kind of a global footprint. So updating the airport and hosting the World Cup and really investing in the different sports franchises and kind of the infrastructure of downtown, that I think Kansas City would really like to be that heartland hub, as far as not just people living there, but kind of culturally too, and kind of evolution of ideas, that, I think we'll see more and more companies, kind of large scale come to Kansas City, and more opportunities such as the World Cup, that Kansas City will kind of make a play for that, as compared to a Chicago or a Denver or Dallas that we're often compared to kind of in the middle of the map. That I think Kansas City will be right up there, with a lot of those other cities.
Do you have a favorite Kansas City memory? Maybe it's music related, maybe it's not. But something either growing up that sticks out to you specifically about growing up here in the city.
Yeah, so Kansas City Jazz Festival's kind of taken different forms over the years. But at one point, when it was titled the Kansas City Jazz Festival, they did it at the Gym Theater down on 18th and Vine. I remember I was a teenager going down with my dad to see Arturo Sandoval, who's one of the global talents of trumpet playing, and sitting on the third or fourth row. And it was supposed to be outside, but it was raining, and so it was having to be inside. And we just somehow made our way to the front of the line. And so, just like everything else, be it World Cup or sports or industry, Kansas City brings through the best musicians as well. I mean, you can go about every other year to the Kaufman Center and see Yo-Yo Ma, who's the best cello player in the world, and a lot of different concert series. They're really invested in kind of the endowment phase as far as, making sure we continue to have that culture and presence as far as music and art and things that would be that global level, that we can access here in Kansas City. So pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So who or what has probably influenced your view of Kansas City and the community here the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of influence, I think, in order to appreciate Kansas City, you have to appreciate the diversity of the different parts of Kansas City. If you met somebody from Kansas City, I don't know if you would know they're from Kansas City right away, depending on kind of what area of town they're from.
The Kansas City shirt might give it away.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of those. Yeah, if you have your Charlie Hustle shirt. I like to travel and wear my Royals caps.
Yeah,
That does seem to be a popular, like when people travel,
Yeah.
you want to represent.
That's
It's
right.
not, it's so funny. Sometimes it's not even a sports team. Sometimes it's just the Charlie Hustle. Like, I just want to rep my city
Right.
wherever I
Yeah,
go.
I'm at
Yeah.
the airport.
I once heard somebody say that they don't have to look at what gate their plane's at; they'll just follow the Kansas City shirts.
Where
Yeah.
the Chiefs guys are going. Yeah, but I think that's the best thing about Kansas City, is that you get so many different aspects and walks of life. Is that it's not all a particular flavor. It really is kind of a cool area that things continue to develop. That you have kind of, like I said, that industry and farming past, with kind of this up and coming city, which makes it a really cool place to be. Meet a lot of different, interesting and different sorts of folks. So.
Yeah, definitely. When you think about having grown up here, is there somebody, some famous, maybe not famous Kansas City, and who guys stands out as having influenced like your kind of view of life, music, the world?
Yeah, I got to interact with Buck O'Neill a few times, who's kind of the baseball legend from Kansas City, even kind of outside pre-Royals organization, just his involvement in baseball. And he was such a great ambassador for the city, just kind of the Midwest roots of being really humble and really down to earth, but obviously was a great talent, both as a baseball player, but eventually went on to work in the MLB for the Cubs and other teams as kind of a recruiter and a coach. And then ultimately was kind of this public speaker and kind of inspirational figure. And so I think he carried so much humility and pride for Kansas City and just what it represented to be just a neighbor and a person in our community. And I think, getting to interact with him a few times as a kid and seeing him speak and seeing him out and about in the community was just, a great kind of trendsetter in terms of who we can be to represent our city, present ourselves as a neighbor for people. And I think Kansas City really embodies that, you go to places on the coast and they say, you guys are really nice. I think that is something that Kansas City strives to be is, a strong neighbor and a good companion in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I think we obviously talked a lot about jazz music today, but I think that's the other piece of that went so intertwined was the Negro Leagues, right? And how even still, if you've ever heard Bob Kendrick speak, who's the president of the Negro League Museum right now, like what Kansas City has meant to the country in music and jazz or music and the baseball and all these things, I think is lost on a generation of people who haven't really gotten to experience the same way of, what Buck O'Neill meant to not only to baseball players at the time, but also to a generation of people who grew up in a world that wasn't necessarily supportive of them. Right.
Sure.
So I think Kansas City, for all of our, our Midwest nice and those things, I think we really have been on the forefront of a lot of things that people don't always recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe as we wind down here, maybe let's go to our rapid fire questions.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. You ready?
This is the fun time.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. What's your go-to barbecue spot and what are you ordering when you get there?
I don't know if I have a favorite barbecue spot, but always Burnt Ends. That's where I take people, to experience Kansas City barbecues, to the Burnt Ends sandwich. So always got to.
Where would you take somebody if you had family coming in from out of town or friends visiting in Kansas City? Where would be your spot you take them?
Maybe the top three.
Oh, man. So up north, like Scotch Kitchen is always solid.
Yeah.
I've taken people to Joe's KC, and then if you want to kind of step into a little bit more formal setting, Q39 never disappoints. So I always have a good experience there. So.
Do you count Joe's KC because it's on the Kansas side, or are we okay with that as Northlanders?
Yeah, I mean, you can still see Missouri.
That is the one thing I wish they would open up a location in the Northland. That'd be great. I think we're missing. We have kind of the more unique barbecue spots in when you mentioned Scotch Kitchen, which is great. Yeah, there's some good ones. There's a number of others, but I think we're missing kind of the staples that you would maybe think of when you think of Kansas City barbecue.
Name brand,
right.
big.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fair. What's your favorite Kansas City tradition?
So we just went to the mayor's Christmas tree lighting this year, and I think that's going to be like our play every year. So, the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, you go and just really kick off the holiday season. That was a lot of fun. So, yeah.
It's a good one and a little bit more accessible than trying to do the Plaza Lights.
Yes. Yeah. So. They do it in shifts. So you're there at 6 o'clock and you're out by 7 and the next group's coming in. So they've got it all down. Yeah. Down pat's nice.
What's maybe a hidden gem in Kansas City that people should know about?
Oh, man. So we live kind of up by Smithville Lake. We really like going out there, not just to swim and things, but just kind of to hike and camp and, all sorts of things. And I think that's maybe kind of beyond as far as people get right now. But it's really not that much farther than a Kansas City address reaches. You're basically at Smithville Lake by the time you cross into Smithville. So that's one of our favorite spots. I don't think everybody travels to maybe as much as they should. So.
Yeah. And really takes full advantage of it. It's a really cool area.
Yeah.
That is, you're right, it's not that far that I think a lot of people often overlook.
Yeah. Most of the things are free or you pay a couple bucks for camping or things like that.
Yeah.
So very easy to get to and access.
So you're a Northlander through and through, obviously. But if you had to pick another part of the metro to live in, where do you think you would plan?
Yeah. So there was about a year where they were working on the new bridge at I-69, and I was cutting through KCK a lot to get downtown. And there's some really cool neighborhoods in like old KCK, kind of Strawberry Hill that area. I was like, that's really neat. Like I never really spent a lot of time, I always just cut straight down the highway, but kind of go in that roundabout. And I was like, this is kind of a cool area of town. There's a couple live music venues that I play down there now over the years. And so I think, KCK might be a cool spot to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There's some beautiful old homes in KCK.
Yeah.
Sure.
A lot of history.
Awesome. And I know it's rare. You have 2 little ones. Wife is busy, but say you have a free Saturday in Kansas City. how are you going to spend it?
Yeah, so we'll go out a lot of times on Saturday morning. There's different coffee shops around town. I think you guys are putting together an episode with Renegade, maybe coming up here. So we'll hit up there. There's a lot of great like outdoor like splash pads and things
Sure,
like that, or
yep.
we'll do different pools and stuff around town. And then somehow, we always seem to end up doing ice cream, which there's a lot of great ice cream spots. There's a place up by us called Alice Scoopers,
Yep.
which is like Alice Cooper,
That's
but
awesome.
ice cream. And so, yeah, a lot of great places to hit up around that are good treats, so things like that. Gotta
Yeah.
appreciate.
Awesome. And I think that kind of wraps us up. But Joel, where can people find you if they want to come see you play or follow you somewhere so they can find out where you're playing in the future?
Absolutely. So yeah, Joel Gordon Music is my handle for most things, joelgordonmusic.com. Look up the Northland Big Band, things for future jazz, and the Northland Symphony Saxophone Ensemble. Exciting things rolling out this year. But yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, guys. And always fun to talk about Kansas City with a few other Northlanders up in the Northland here right now.
That's right.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Joel. Please go check out Joel Northland Big Band. I've seen him play a number of times. Fantastic music and lots of fun. So thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.